Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff Woollard, and I am one of the medical physicists here at The Ohio State University. And I also serve as the Associate Director for the Medical Physics Residency Program. I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes or so providing you with kind of a big picture overview of our Medical Physics Residency Program. We'll start with a history of the program. We'll talk a little bit about the people involved in the program. I'll describe some of the opportunities available to residents in our program, and then we'll finish up with a little bit more detail of the structure of the program and kind of what to expect if you were to become a resident here. Now, I would much rather be doing this presentation live. It's much more fun that way, but this is what we're stuck with, so please bear with me as I work through these pre-recorded presentations. Okay, so as promised, I'll start with kind of a history of the program. Okay, so our program is led by our program director, Dr. Nalendu Gupta, and I serve as the associate program director. And this residency program here at Ohio State has been in place since 2003. And Dr. Gupta has been in charge of it since then. And to date, we have 22 gainfully employed graduates, so that's a good thing. In 2011, our residency program moved from being hospital-based to being under the guidance of the Graduate Medical Education Office. So we went from a hospital-based program to a university recognized program under the guidance of the GME. Okay, in 2011, I was appointed associate director, and you can see what my first task was, because in 2012, we received our initial Camp Up accreditation. So during 2011, we prepared a self-study, submitted, got approved. We were accredited in 2012 for 4 years, so through December 2016. And then in December 2016, we were reaccredited for 5 years until December 2021. Okay, and we are currently working on our paperwork and self-study for our reaccreditation, I guess. Our residency program has grown since 2003. So we started out taking 1 resident a year. So it's a 2-year program, so we had 2 residents. In 2012, we moved to 3 residents. In 2015, we expanded to 4 residents plus 1. That plus 1 is the capability of adding a 5th resident through an agreement with the U.S. Armed Forces, right? If occasionally they will have a candidate that they would like to be trained in therapeutic medical physics. So, and they had one in 2015. So we restructured our program to be able to accommodate 5 residents. And for that 2 years, we had 5. We haven't had another one since 2015. So typically we're operating with 4 residents. Okay. And here at Ohio State, we have a medical physics residency program. We have a radiation oncology residency program. We have a dosimetry school. We have a radiation oncology therapist training program. All the programs are pretty well combined, but the medical physics and radiation oncology residency programs, there's a lot of collaboration there. In fact, we share didactics, and this collaboration is one of the stated goals for our department. And this works out well, right? Because we have our medical physics residents who may have radiation oncology doctor type questions. And if they can't find a doctor to ask, or they don't feel comfortable asking one of the radiation oncology doctors, they'll go to one of the rad onc residents and ask them the question. Similarly, the same thing happens if a rad onc resident has a physics question that's goofy, or they're embarrassed to ask one of us, they'll go to the resident, right? There's a great teamwork there. Also, I should state, what I like to see is sometimes I'll go back to the brachy department when there's a case going on, and I'll see the medical physics resident and the radiation oncology resident sitting at the computer doing a brachy treatment plan. And the rad-onc resident will be sitting at the computer contouring and explaining what they're doing to the physics resident. And then when they're done, the radiation oncology resident gets up. So does the physics resident. They change seats. The physics resident sits down and starts doing the plan and explaining to the radiation oncology resident what they're doing, right? So there's great collaboration there. Okay, lots of opportunity for that collaboration. So some of the people involved in the program, I introduced Dr. Gupta and myself. Here are our residents. So these are our current second year residents. We have Sagarika, who got her master's degree from Duke, and Sam, who got her master's from Oregon Health and Science University. These guys are great. We have a really good team here. And here are our current first year physics residents. We have Jay he got his PhD at State University of New York, and Amanda, who got her master's from Oregon Health and Science University. So if you were to come here as residents, these would be your senior residents. And again, we have a great group here. Okay, here's kind of a busy slide that provides a big picture overview of our application statistics over the years, actually since 2004, so since the inception of our residency program. This plot shows number of applicants per year in these bars, the number that we interviewed, the number accepted, and then, as I mentioned, if we got that armed service resident. Okay, so you could see early on the numbers kind of jumped around a little bit, and you can also see the number accepted as our program grew. We've kind of stabilized over the last 10 years or so. We get about 100 applications a year. We interview usually right around 20, and then we accept 2. Okay, and then there was that one year when we took 2, and then we had the armed service person. Okay. So let me talk now a little bit about, well, I talked about the history and gave you some statistics. So now let's talk about program development, right? And we do a lot here to maintain our program and keep it current. So let me talk a little bit about that, and also blend in some of the opportunities available to residents here. Okay. So our program is under continuous development and restructuring to meet the changing needs. Obviously, new treatment techniques come out routinely, new task group reports, new equipment. Our curriculum needs to evolve to keep up with this. So we have kind of a program in place where our curriculum is evaluated and updated yearly. And that's based on feedback from faculty, staff, and residents, right? Each year we'll send out a survey to faculty, staff, and residents and ask for what things they would like to see incorporated into the curriculum. We'll form a curriculum subcommittee who will then meet, take the results of this survey, look at new treatment methodologies, new task group reports, and then update our curriculum accordingly, right? Some of the things that have spun out of this curriculum subcommittee are end of rotation oral exams, right? They were introduced here in the past few years. Now I know you might be thinking, that sounds horrible, an end of rotation oral exam. And while they might not be fun at first, it's a good thing. I've actually had residents tell me that this was their favorite part of the whole program, right? I'm pretty sure they were telling me the truth. This is great because not only do end of rotation oral exams allow us to evaluate how far you're progressing, through your rotations, but they also prepare you for the ABR Part 3 exam, right? And they also prepare you to function as a clinical physicist in the clinic, right? As a clinical physicist, you're going to be walking through the department, and a doctor or a therapist is going to grab you and confront you with a question or a problem. you're going to need to be able to think on your feet and work through that problem. And this is great practice for that, right? So it's not all bad, okay? I kind of talked about this, restructuring, streamlining curriculum. We have our subcommittee that restructures this yearly. All of our core rotation competencies have been updated within the past 2 years, yearly actually. One of the big changes was it used to be our shielding and commissioning rotations were separate, but once we got our training LINAC, we combined our shielding and commissioning rotations and made it a 2-month rotation, which then allowed the residents to independently perform shielding evaluations and commissioning activities, right? So by putting it into 2 months, that gives you enough time to actually commission a beam on a LINAC, right? You'll pick in your commissioning rotation, you'll pick, I want to commission a 6X beam in Eclipse. So, okay, off you go to the Eclipse manual, figure out what data you need to measure. Then off you go to the training LINAC, you set up the 3D water tank, you make those measurements, you put that data into our Eclipse treatment planning system that we have in our training center, you model the beam, you then do calculations and perform more measurements to see how well you did, right? It used to be our commissioning rotation was 1 month. It was kind of hard to get all that done. But by moving it to 2 months and combining it with shielding, you get to do the commissioning concurrently with a shielding calculation and take advantage of that training LINAC. Also within that shielding commissioning rotation, you get to the 2 residents get to independently do a TG51 calibration of the training LINAC by themselves. Okay, so that all came out of feedback that we got from our surveys, right? More independence, more hands-on activities. There's tons of other clinical projects that are going on here that you can get involved with. We have monthly research meetings. We maintain this giant list of research projects that the different staff and faculty physicists are involved in. And you can pick one of those and get involved in an ongoing project. Or if you have your own idea for a clinical project, something you'd like to do, we're always open to that. And the clinical projects slash research opportunities are available to you through our elective rotation, right? Our residency program is 2 years, and we're really a very clinical residency program. We want to train you to be a clinical medical physicist, but we realize as a clinical medical physicist, you will have clinical projects. So we want to get you some experience in that. So we do that via this elective rotation. So typically what you'll do for the elective rotation is you'll identify one of these ongoing projects or a new project that you want to get involved with. You'll identify some small part of that project to be your elective project. And then you'll do that. You get 1 month dedicated just to that project. Then at the end of that month, you write up a little report on what you did, and that's it for the elective rotation. But then oftentimes, and our hope is that you'll continue on in that project and develop and do more work and be able to develop an abstract or something that you can submit to the AAPM meeting, which happens at the end of your first year, right? And we've been pretty successful with this model. Most of our residents get to go to AAPM and present the work that they at least started in their elective rotation. Okay, there's lots of opportunities. One of the other things that came out of our curriculum development was we adopted something that we call the single preceptor model. Excuse me. And what we found was for each of our big rotations, we would rotate preceptors, and the preceptors were the physicists that you'd work with. And that didn't give us uniform results. So what we did was we restructured our preceptor model and came up with what we call a primary preceptor and secondary preceptors. And quickly, what that is for each rotation that you're on, each of the big rotations, you'll have a primary preceptor who will be responsible for helping you get through all of the competencies and didactic readings in your rotation. And they'll also help you tie what you're learning in the clinic back to the didactics that you've developed in your master's program. And then the secondary preceptors are the actual clinical physicists that you'll work with back in the treatment hallway, right? So you'll typically say you're on a brachytherapy rotation. You'll go to the brachytherapy treatment and hang out with the staff physicists. Those are your secondary preceptors. They'll tell you, here's what we're doing. They'll let you do the plan while they watch and be involved. And you'll work with them day to day, and then weekly you'll meet with your primary preceptor, and we'll have meetings. I'm the primary for brachy and external beam. We'll have meetings where I'll say, okay, what'd you do this week? And you'll say, oh, I did a brachy plan. And I'll say, okay, what'd you do? And you'll tell me what you did, and I'll say, why did you do that? Right? Trying to tie back those didactic underpinnings to the clinical activity, right? So we find that this preceptor model works really well. Okay, and again, I won't go into it anymore. I've probably given you more detail than you want to know. But if you want to see the roles and responsibilities of the various preceptors, these are all available in our program manual, which is online on our website. You can find the roles and responsibilities for the primary preceptors, the secondary preceptors, your senior residents, and also you as the first year resident, right? What are your roles and responsibilities? We have everything spelled out pretty well, okay? Additionally here, I mentioned we have a therapy program. So our physics residents, if you like teaching, can get involved in that therapy program. We teach some physics classes, some QA classes, and typically the physics residents get involved by leading the QA labs that we have for the therapy students over at our training LINAC. So there's teaching opportunities as well. Here, I promise some of the details of what to expect as you come in here as a resident. Here's a sample plan for your 2 years you'll spend here. You can see you'll rotate through functional areas in the department. And we have you rotate through the big functional areas twice. You'll have A rotations in dosimetry, external beam, brachy, and radiosurgery, and then you'll have B rotations in those same things. So let's talk a little bit about this. You'll start out your first year, everyone starts out with an orientation rotation. This is where you'll spend a few days in each of the different regions of the department, getting to know the equipment, getting to know the people, and just familiarizing yourself with the surroundings. Then you'll jump into your major rotations, dosimetry or external or brachy or radiosurgery. These will be 2-month rotations, except for dosimetry, which is 3 months. These are the ones that'll have the end of rotation exam. And during these rotations, we really focus on you learning the procedures and what we're doing and a little bit of why. And somewhere in your first year, you'll have your elective rotation. I know this shows it in year 2, but we've moved it to year 1 so that you have the opportunity to do a project that you can submit to AAPM. You'll get through your A rotations. Then in year 2, you'll do your B rotations and your shielding and commissioning rotation, right? And during the B rotations, we like to emphasize a little more. We expect a little more from the resident, more than just knowing what they're doing and why, but maybe how would you start a program doing brachytherapy, or how would you implement a new radiosurgery procedure, those sorts of things. We build the responsibilities and the expectations from A to B to try and, by the end of 2 years, have you be capable of jumping out into the clinic and fully functioning as a physicist, a solo physicist if you wanted, Okay, that's our goal. That's the goal of our program. Also in year 2, you'll see we have an admin and professional rotation. Dr. Gupta leads that one, teaches you how to do all the big picture stuff. And it ends, the last month of your residency is called your clinical coverage rotation. And this is where we throw you out into the clinic as a fully functioning physicist. Typically, the residents will spend 2 weeks here at our main center, getting a feeling for what it's like to be a clinical physicist in a big department. And then they'll spend a couple weeks at our breast center, which is a little smaller facility, where they'll get a feeling of what it's like to be maybe a solo physicist in a small department. Okay. Really, our goal is to, as I mentioned, generate medical physicists who are ready to jump into the clinic and participate. Okay, some of the didactics, I'm not going to go through this whole giant list, but there's lots of didactic opportunities here for you. Some are required, others are, some percentage of them are required. But we have weekly physics meetings where our physics group gets together and talks about issues or new treatment techniques. We like the physicists and the residents to attend all of these. We have a weekly physics education conference, which is run by one of our physicists here, Ashley. She does a great job. This is a mix of AAPM presentations, board sessions, and presentations by residents and physicists. We like for our residents to go to those every week. There's several didactic series offered. We mentioned these earlier. We have physics and dosimetry didactics, clinical didactics, and radiobiology didactics. These are offered to the radiation oncology residents as well as the medical physics residents all together. So these are good to get involved in. They're not required, but you go to them as needed. We have chart rounds, journal club, visiting professor presentations, teaching conferences. These are kind of fun. The medical residents will do these teaching conferences every so often, where they'll talk about one disease site and how to treat. Also, all of our residents are required to take the RAFEX exam at the end of year 1, and many of our residents take it at the end of year 1 and end of year 2 in preparation for part 2 of the exam. We also have an ABR style mock oral exam at the end of residency, and this is where we try and imitate the ABR part 3 exam as best we can. We have 5 examiners. They each ask 5 questions. So you go from office to office, you go in, you sit down, you answer your questions in 30 minutes and move to the next, right? To try and simulate that part 3 exam. We require our second year residents to take it, but usually our first year residents take it too, just for the fun of it, right? The more practice, I guess our philosophy here is, you've done lots of written exams all your life, but not many oral exams. So the more practice you get, the better, okay? And also OSU has a ton of courses available if you need, and the need for these classes would be evaluated by the program director, okay? So I think that's it. I think we made it through everything. So if I know I dumped a ton of information on you, and it's a pre-recorded thing, so it's super boring. But if you have any more questions, you can ask, but I won't hear you because it's pre-recorded. But anyway, at our website, you can find, which is shown here, you can find our current program handbook, which hopefully will answer a lot of questions. You can find general information regarding our department and the physics group. And lastly, you can find our contact information. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to call or email us, all right? We're happy to answer, okay? That's all I've got. Thanks for your time. I'm sorry I probably took more than 10 minutes, but once I get going on this stuff, I just never know when to stop. Thank you.